I'm really delighted to welcome Karen Ann. And again, just because one of the things that came out in the first session this morning was how effective we're beginning to find that Padlet has been. I love Padlet. I think it's been quite instrumental for us. And during the course of today, so Karen Ann is here to show us the kind of stuff that she's been doing on it. As I would say, Karen Ann, an early adopter, but has really got your head around it very quickly. And then later on this afternoon, I'm just going to show a slightly more advanced use of Padlet that can facilitate kind of like group work. So Karen Ann, thank you ever so much for taking the time out to join us today. It's really appreciated. I will be managing your boards at the end, so just shout when you're ready to do that. But thank you, and I'll hand you over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think I have to say that please note that the session will be recorded, which I hope is okay with everybody. I'm going to talk to you about Padlet within the context of how we are using it on the BA illustration course, and in particular with all year groups. But in this presentation, I'm going to focus on levels 4 and 6 in particular. We started looking at Padlet in the first lockdown, so really in March, April, as a way of supporting all students. But in particular, we wanted to do so with our level 6s towards their final exhibitions and their final submission. So we were using it in a limited way then, and we were doing so through our own accounts before this academic year, but that was very much directed in specific areas of the course. We felt it was quite successful from both a student and staff perspective. So we decided to roll it out across all 3 year groups and the MA illustration this year. And we've been really pleased by its success. However, as I'll point out later, it hasn't been without its teething problems. Not many, but a few, and some in particular that we're still trying to get around. So I'll talk about those as well. But I thought before I go into the student engagement side of it, I'd just show you the basic Padlet for those who haven't used it before as part of the presentation. So to get into Padlet, the first thing you should know is that you don't have to, and in some ways it's better not to, make or register a personal account. So I'll talk about why that's so a little later, but the university has the license for Padlet. So you only have to put this address in to get started, uop.padlet.org. This brings up your university login details and screen, and you use your normal email address and then password as so. So you just have the password in the normal way and then click next. This brings you to the home page, and you can see that these are my little Padlets. They're called Nemes, I think is the official word, but we call them with the students our paddles. So we quite like that term. So we call them our paddles. But you'll come up with a white screen there. Before you start creating Padlets, I just wanted to discuss that little problem I was talking about and a way around it. If you haven't got a personal Padlet account, or you've not registered with Padlet, you'll be absolutely fine. You've got no worries. However, most of us did have a personal Padlet account. As illustrators, it was one of the platforms we used to put our illustration out on. And that did cause us some problems. When we tried to set up a Portsmouth Padlet, we couldn't get it to work. And it seemed that Padlet was confused between our different addresses, same names, different addresses. And the way that we found our way around that was we had to cancel our personal accounts, and then we restarted with the UOP accounts. So once we set the UOP account up, we then re-registered our personal accounts and everything seemed to work. That sounds a bit strange, but it did work. So as illustrators who, as I say, use this facility, we wanted to be able to keep our personal accounts as well. So much like a website, it was a good way of finding a way around this. So if we go to that page and it would be blank, the most important places I think to start with are the pink, orange and green links here. So you've got make a Padlet, join a Padlet, and you've got the gallery. So I'm going to go into the gallery first. And the gallery is a really good way of looking at what people have done and what people are doing and what they're creating. There are so many different Padlets and different ways of using them. And you'll see a diverse range of those here. So then if you want to make a Padlet, you just click on this pink button here, this pink link here, and that'll take you to the composition page. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because you can develop your Padlet in a way that suits your work with your students. You can personalize it in many ways. So if we have a look at these, you have different sort of compositional aspects. The red wall layout sets out your Padlet in the forms of shapes, like a brick wall. The green canvas composition is good for doing things like brainstorming and that sort of thing. We use that a lot for anything like brainstorming. The purple Padlet then is a single stream. So it's just one stream, goes down the middle of the screen, where you choose to either have the most recent or oldest posts at the top. The timeline, I'm here now, aren't I? Sorry, now I've missed out the grid. The grid is exactly what it says it is and sorts Padlets into a grid system. So it's exactly what it says. The timeline here is great for showing students how to plan and organise the year, from their initial brief, in our case, to the final exhibition and anything in between. So if they've got submission dates and all those sort of things, we use that in that way. And the map, I know Andy used it, and we sort of followed on from what he was doing, and we used the map just to find out where all our students were, because they were all over the world. So that was a good sort of icebreaker for us. The yellow channel is almost like WhatsApp. It's basically a chat environment. And finally, the blue one, the shelf, it's almost stacked on top of each other, but you get several columns. We really like this because we could give each student a column in both the year and the group Padlets, and also in their individual Padlets. They could use that to divide their work into sections or modules. So, oh, sorry, excuse me, my phone going. Once you have there chosen your composition, you can title and describe your Padlet, and you do that through the remake button, which is underneath this little section here. So I'll show you those later, but there's a little link there where you can remake it. It just gives you the chance to put your own title and description in. So we've had a bit of fun with these. The students have sometimes renamed them, and the staff, there's a little bit of competition. Some of us have called them the remarkable Padlet, and then my colleague calls his the best Padlet, and the students quite like that. So we had a little bit of fun. So then you can compose on there, and what happens here is that you get a little plus sign either within where you're going to post or down here in a little pink circle. And if you click on that, you can then start posting. And again, I'll show you those later on. You can modify the Padlet as well. And again, that's under this section. So you've got some buttons, some little clicking points there that you can click on to modify your Padlet. And you can change the layout if it doesn't work with your students, whilst keeping the essence of what you've put on there. So you won't necessarily lose your work. Again, you can change the description and the title. You can also change the wallpaper, the colour of the Padlet, the font, etc., which really helps. You know, just to make it a bit different. Sometimes we change it around, and also you've got your URL for the page, which is here. So if you want to link to another Padlet, you just use that there, and that helps to link to other people's Padlets. So if you want to make more Padlets, you can see the orange icon here. That allows you to, as I said just a moment ago, another way of joining another Padlet. And that's great for students who may be in different groups, but they can then access each other's Padlet if they want to, and you can administer the appropriate settings. You can make as many Padlets as you wish, and you can also share and like Padlets. You can also archive your Padlets. As you'll see later, are quite big now, and we're discussing how and with what frequency frequency, we might archive them due to the amount of memory they take, and therefore the impact they have. If you have an older device, as I do, it's more difficult to load them up. So that is perhaps one of the negatives as opposed to the many positives. So if your device does struggle with a very heavy memory that Padlet uses, you'll get a message telling you so at the top of the screen, and I'm always getting that message saying it's using a lot of memory. So the other option for me is, of course, to extend the amount of memory I have in my computer, but that's another issue. So a really good thing for the students that we have done, oops, sorry, there we go, is that we have embedded Padlet within Moodle, and it does that. It's very easily, you can just embed the link, and we did that in induction week. So we embedded the link there. All the students in each of your group know exactly where it is. They can go to it, they can have access to it, and it's interesting as well that the level 4s have cottoned onto this very quickly, because of course they didn't know Moodle, and I found it really, really successful. The level 6s, on the other hand, I think because they knew what they were expected to do and how they were going to go into their final year and what they had to use, they just had one or two more problems, I would say. But again, I'll come back to that when we look at their feedback. However, I have to say that using it within Moodle like that has worked really, really well, and we haven't had any huge problems with that. So if I go on to a screenshot of how we've been using it, this is our level 4. We called it our level 4 Remarkable Padlet, and we've got as our subtitle, Made with an Open Mind. I'll show you this live at the end when Andy can support me in that. We chose this column option, which was the blue one that I was talking about. And you can see that each student has their name along the top here. Okay, here's that little plus sign that I was talking about. And all the student has to do is to press the plus sign, and straight away they can post, they can upload, they can link their work to other things. So it's a really easy way of bringing all their work together. And as well, they can use it for peer review. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the parameters we've set in terms of that. Lou, my level 4 colleague, and I can post comments and critique to most posts. We don't do it to every single one. It would just be far too much. But we like to try and post twice a week. And the engagement with the students, therefore, we feel is pretty strong compared to normal teaching, where sometimes we wouldn't see that student other than in a lecture session. Or if we were walking through the studio and grabbed them. But here we feel that the engagement is pretty good. And we can give critical feedback almost straight away, or as soon as we link in there. I'll go to the next one, and you can see more work here. We can edit the columns, we can rename the columns. We have had a student who's changed their name, so we've just quite easily been able to change their name there. We can move the columns around. If we want to put the students in groups or to breakout rooms, we can also use this, and we can move the students into their groups before they go into the breakout rooms. So that's really, really helpful. We can also delete the columns if the student should leave. So that's another good one. We've had to do that with a couple, but it keeps it all up to date. It's very easy to keep it up to date. Also, you can see 3 dots there by the student's name. Those 3 dots allow the student to click on there. They can change the color of their post, they can change the backdrop to it, they can edit it, they can transfer it, they can copy or expand it, and they can delete that particular post. So it's very, very user-friendly. Again, in terms of privacy settings, which I mentioned earlier, underneath here, you have a little icon that says share. if you click on that icon, you can change what the members can do within that Padlet. And you can see that at the moment, there's myself and Louis, who are the level 4 tutors. Andy's on there because we asked him for some help a little while ago, and so he's on there as an administrator as well. So the pink ones are administrators, and you can, I don't know why it keeps doing that. You can give people editing rights. They can just have reading rights. So you know, you can administer that yourself and decide what people can do within Padlet. They give you different levels of privacy. They allow you to monitor what the students can put in and on the course, or how the wider University of Portsmouth studentship can link with it. So that's quite interesting as well. You can also copy the link. You can use a QR code. I'm trying to find there we are. You can use a QR code. You can embed, as I talked about earlier, in Moodle. You can email this work or a Padlet. You can save work as a PDF. You can also save in Excel, and you can print from Padlet. So again, they're all really useful. And for our students as well, they take pictures with their mobiles of their work in their sketchbook. They upload that to Padlet, and then they can take a screenshot of Padlet and they can put that back in their sketchbook. So it has a really nice sort of cyclical feel, you know, and where they're starting with something, and they sort of have a sense of completion. You'll notice on this particular screenshot that there are 3 names there with no work below them. This is where we can add students who join the course late. So these 3 students have transferred over consolidation week, and they're catching up on the work they've missed. They can add their work as they go from the start, and they have the advantage of seeing what has already been produced in the completed tasks. So for anyone who's joining the course late, it's really, really helpful for those people to be able to see what's already been done. Okay, so this is one of my tutor group in level 6. This is Elliot, and I think he's brought up some really interesting points. So he says that Padlet is a brilliant tool. He thinks it's better than resources that we've previously used. I'm not quite sure whether he's talking about Moodle or what he's talking about there, or whether he's talking about face-to-face in the studio tutorials. But he does say it's modernised tutorials and peer assessment. And this is one thing they do really love, is the peer assessment. They can put a critique on somebody else's work. They can see each other's work. And I think for the majority that works. Obviously, you have to monitor it for some students who may be feeling a little bit pressured, or that their work isn't as good as somebody else's. So you've got to be mindful of that. But he says it makes things clearly presented and very accessible. In previous years, it's been difficult to present work to tutors and to see peers' work. But that work can now be easily reviewed and assessed. And again, I think those are good points that he's made. But I think for him, the 2 things that come to mind are convenience and accessibility. And I think, like some people were saying in the previous session, that this allows the students to do the work, to upload the work, to look at other people's work in their own time. And they do find that really, really helpful. So if I go to Amber, so this is Amber's viewpoint on Padlet. She says, I can upload my work and could potentially see it at any time, which is what we've just talked about. They can refer back to it, which is really nice. They can go right back to the beginning of the course at the moment, and I'll come back to that. She likes sharing the work with both myself and the other students, but she likes the fact that that isn't restricted to tutorials as we did it in the before lockdown. and she said, I think it's very useful considering we can't see each other casually in the studio too. But I think the next point where she said Padlet kind of forces you to have to show your work to the rest of the group. But in a way that kind of happens in group tutorials anyway. So when we're in a tutorial setting, we all sit around, they all have their sketchbook, we all look at each other's work. Maybe the anonymity, in a sense, of putting it onto Padlet works for some of those that are less confident. But I think that generally we haven't had too many problems with that, although we are starting to address the students that have had, who aren't engaging with Padlet. And that is another really strong thing with Padlet, is that you can see straight away who is engaging with it and who isn't. So you can pick people up and you can get in touch, you can support those people who aren't for any reason. I think probably the point at the bottom is the disadvantage for some of them, and I think it's an organisational thing with the students. They find it hard to remember all the Padlets that have been made for us. So at the beginning we thought we'd have one Padlet and everything could go on it for all the different modules, but now we found there's just too much and people are doing things in slightly different ways. So for our self-directed project, in level 6, I have a Padlet. Then for professional practice, one of my colleagues has a Padlet for the students. In applied illustration, they have a Padlet. And I think it's starting to come out now that some of the level 6s feel that there's too many Padlets. But I've talked to my tutor group about organising the Padlets into one place where they can just click on the different Padlets, go straight to them. And I think it is more about organisation and then getting used to it. So, yeah. So this is Hannah. Padlet's been a great way of communication between me and Karen Ann and even other students in my group. We share ideas with each other and Karen Ann can directly communicate her ideas and send links to us through Padlet. Hannah, early on in her project, hit a brick wall, which the students often do when they start these long self-directed projects. And it was really interesting because she said, I'm stuck. She just put stuck on Padlet in big capital letters. And straight away I was able to go and say, try this. What if you did this? What if you did that? Have a go at this. And it was, as I say, it was almost immediate. It was within hours. And straight away we overcame that problem. As she says, I think it is a little hard for some students to get used to, but they do find once they've got used to it, it's a really good resource. And again, she says it's great to upload work so others can see what you've been doing and commenting on what they like and what direction you can take it in. And I'll come in a little while to sort of privacy, but you can set the Padlet so that it they can't, there's no profanities can go on what they put on. It can be, you can edit that out, and there are various ways of doing that. But at the beginning we had a long discussion about supporting each other, being kind to each other, being respectful of each other's work and critiquing in a positive way, which we would have done anyway in the studio in group tutorials. So the advantages of Padlet from our point of view is that the staff point of view is that it's easy to use, it's easy to set up. You can upload so much. My computer does stop me uploading moving images, which is a bit of a pain because we do a little bit of animation as well. But certainly pictures, audio, demos, all those sort of things you can upload, and I'll show you those when I do the live little bit of the presentation. And again, the students can view these in their own time, which I think is a real bonus for them. You can link Padlets. All the staff have access to the year group Padlet. So particularly for level 6, where we're divided into group tutorial groups, we have a certain number of students that we are responsible for. But those students can go to other members of staff, and I'll show you how we've organised that in a second. You can embed Padlet in Moodle. That's been so successful, as I've already said. It's very visual, and for a visual subject, you want it to be really visual. It's a good way to develop peer support, peer reviewing, and with the criteria I set out, or we set out at the beginning, as I've just discussed. And it's ideal to see how quickly or how which students are falling behind and who's developing their work in a very positive way. The disadvantages, we're having a few problems at the moment, but I think part of it is I thought it was my computer being an old computer, but others are having the problems as well. And we have, as you'll see in a minute, we have a huge amount of work on Padlet, lots and lots of images. And the more you add, it seems the slower it gets. And I know Thomas has been sort of trying to talk to Padlet about this on our behalf. That is something we are trying to deal with at the moment, and we're not sure quite why that's happening. We talked about students perhaps feel there are too many. However, they can be a little bit more organised in the way that they put their links together for Padlet. And also we're finding that we can archive now, and there are ways of taking down the amount of information you have on the Padlet, archiving it, and almost starting that Padlet again. So you have 8 weeks, 6 weeks, say, before consolidation week, then another 6 weeks, and each 6 weeks you might archive it. You'll see from the live session that some students have found it difficult to engage with Padlet. Out of 55 students, we've probably got about 8 who are not engaging with it in the way we would like them to. But I don't think that number is any different to perhaps how they would engage in a face-to-face setting in the studio. It would probably be a similar number. Okay, now the way that we do this, so as I said, we have our tutor groups, and in each tutor group we have 6 or 7 students split between the staff. We have then in the register, as you can see, or the attendance register, we have the names of those students. So here we have my group, we have Hayley, Eleanor, Hannah, Ella, Elliot and Amber. And by each student, we have their individual Padlet. So this Padlet is their own Padlet, it's their own individual Padlet. And if, for instance, Jackie from the second group, one of my students contacted her and said, could I have an individual tutorial? Jackie can just go to that student, say it's Hannah, and she can click on her Padlet, and straight away she can see what she's done up to that point. She can have it on her screen and talk to her while she's having the tutorial. And she can also post things for Hannah after that tutorial. So it means that everybody can connect with every student. So every member of staff can connect with every student. And that's how we've done it. By our own names, by the staff names, we have a group Padlet. And this is for our tutor group. Again, other people can use it because the link is there, but that is mainly for our tutor group, and we use that a little bit more like a notice board. And again, I'll show that in a minute when we come on to it. So in terms of monitoring Padlet, every day we look at it. We haven't had to worry about any bad language, anybody using words they shouldn't do. But if a word is used, or if there's something we're not happy with, Padlet will automatically put an emoji in it. So it has a certain way of combating that. But because we look at it every day and we just scan it, we don't necessarily put posts in every day, as I said earlier, but you can be comfortable in the fact that there isn't going to be any bad language, or it's going to be used in a way we wouldn't want it to be used. We can also, through having the administration rights, which I showed you with the pink little links, you can also edit or delete a post fairly quickly. So it's pretty good in that sense. And then in terms of assessment, I'm just checking the time. In terms of assessment, we can continually feedback on postings every day. Louis and I tend to pop into Padlet most evenings and see what's been posted. You can do a comment if you want to. You don't have to. You can just sort of gauge what's been happening there throughout the day. You constantly are saying to students, do peer reviews, do share your work with the others, do comment on each of the others, because it's going to make life easier for you at the end. You know, usually we have peer review at the end of the project, and they have to go and peer review 3 people's work. But through Padlet, they can do it as they're going through the year. And that's really, really helpful to them, because they've just got to cut and paste or screenshot those peer reviews for their folder at the end of the year. It also informs the end of module assessment with a combination of shared documents and students editing their work and posts alongside electronic sketchbooks, links to websites, electronic portfolios, etc. They're building their work for their final assessment as they go along. And if they're organised, and if we can get them into that mindset, it works really, really well. They've just got to go back and cut and paste. So it's really, really helpful again. So Andy, if you could go on to, let's go with the level 6 groups first, level 6 group Padlet. So I'm going to go into the live session here. That's it, that's the one. So this we've called level 6's Radiant Padlet, and it's made with a passion for illustration. We all have a column. I have my column here. Can you go? That's it, that's lovely, Andy, thank you. And you can see that there I've put the tutorials going forward for post consolidation week. In the second one down under my name, that's the one, Andy, thank you. I've asked them to think about a mandatory project, which is our Made in Portsmouth project, and the briefs have been attached to the Padlet, so under their column, so they know that they have to do that. It's all there, and every time they go onto Padlet, they go to this column first. Below that, I've given them a task to do. We had a quieter week, and I've asked them to go and find something out for each person's project. So they know what each person is doing, what their project is. They go and find a film or a website, a book, a song that might be appropriate for somebody else's project. And then below that are the individual tutorials before consolidation week. If we go to Hannah, I'll use Hannah as I've used her most of the way along, Andy, please. You can see that, just a notice, the Eldon Art Shop's going to be open, something they were quite worried about. So we've managed to put that right across there. So sometimes the messages are for everyone. Sometimes they are particularly for one of those 6 people, but I tend to put them in everybody's column just to reiterate that they need to read it. So I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong, but that's how we do it. And if we go down on Hannah's, there's information from that morning's tutorial. So the information they needed to know is the print room will still continue to operate through the second lockdown. The studio is going to be open, but we didn't know about the art shop then, which we do now at the top. I've also told them to look at optional opportunities. D&AD, Penguin, Batsford competition briefs are out, so it's worth them having a look at those, and they've got the links to those. There's the Made in Portsmouth brief, which I talked about earlier. And then if you go down one more, Andy, on Hannah's, if I come across something which I think is something that might be important to those students, I just pop it in one of the paddles and just say, look, I found this definition, or what about trying this, or have you thought about going to this particular website? And then if we go down one more in Hannah's, Andy, this was when she hit that brick wall, and you can see it's quite a long post, but within that there's several links. And also, as Andy was doing there, what you can do is, if you want to go back to that, Andy, if you could move that post to the top of the column for me, you can just drag and drop. So you can take that post and just put it higher up, and then she's going to read it again. So that's quite useful. And as you can see at the bottom, if you go down, Andy, sorry, she has posted some of her early brainstorming work there. I've given her some feedback, and if you carry on down, Andy, I think is there another one? Yeah, so there's another mind map there. So she's got 3 mind maps she's been looking at with different things. And if you go to that bottom one, Andy, you can see that some of the students have given her some ideas here. One of the things that Padlet does is that when students, sorry, Andy, can you go back to the column? That was lovely. Thank you.
I was just showing that it expands it when they put them in, because people might say that you can't see it.
Yeah, it does expand it. So you just click on anything and it will expand it to your full screen. But here, you do sometimes get anonymous there. And what we did say to the students is, if you do get anonymous at the top of your critique, just put your name at the bottom, because sometimes it was giving their name and sometimes it wasn't, but that was earlier on, so we've sorted that out now. So that's the group Padlet. Am I all right for time, Andy? Yeah. So if we could go to the level 6 individual Padlets, Andy, please. Hannah's, that's the one. So this is Hannah's again, and you can see that we've this time divided it slightly differently. We've used the same layout because it just works for us and for them. And I think if you have too many different layouts, it becomes confusing. It becomes more difficult to monitor. So in the individual tutorials column on the left, that's my notices to her in particular. So there's the evidence, the idea she was stuck. And I sent her that by email too, just because she was quite upset. She has a few mental health problems that get her down, and she wanted that information pretty soon to get her over this sort of hurdle. And Padlet allowed me to do that, but I just reiterated that through an email. First column, she's got brainstorming, initial ideas. She then has a research column, which she can now do. So she's added all this. That's only the first column that I've put things into. In the development, you can see that I've given her some ideas there. I did a little bit of research on her behalf, just to try and get her over this hurdle. As you can see, if you can go down the development one, Andy, she's doing all about Norse mythology, but she's uploaded one of her paintings there. So we started talking about runes and standing stones and all that sort of thing. So it got her over this, and she has put in one of her paintings there, and also her experimentation. She started looking at lino and jewelry and that sort of thing. So she started experimenting with other mediums. So in fact, what's happening on Padlet is very much what would happen in the studio. It's a parallel sort of learning experience in many ways. And if we could go to my lovely level 4s, because this is the one that causes me all my grief, Andy, as much as the wonderfulness of it. So this is our level 4. So we've got approximately 55 students in here. And what Louis and I really, really wanted was to have all the students on one Padlet. Now, I don't know whether we made a rod for our own backs here, and this is what Thomas is sort of investigating for us. But it's very well populated and very heavily populated, and it may be that, we've had good and bad times with it. Sometimes it takes ages to load, sometimes it comes straight up. If we look at Megan's on the left, Andy, please. So remember, these are level 4. This was a workshop we did last week. So this piece of work came from a workshop. And you can see that I have put a comment there, and in fact only did that yesterday, and she's already come back to that. I very much agree on the text. I wanted to use red because that's the color of the nail varnish, and I wanted to use a simple but still interesting font, but I do find that Photoshop can be a bit limiting in that regard. So straight away we can pick up that she has a weakness there with Photoshop that maybe we can talk to her about and develop through the next tutorial. So it has that lovely sort of conversational element to it. And I think that's one of the really good things about Padlet. If we keep going down, Andy, I actually hadn't seen that response she'd put there, but that's great. Yeah, you can keep going down. So this was another example of a workshop. And, oh, Andy, can you just go back up where the line was coming across? Just back up a bit. No, maybe it's loaded now, but I was just going to show you that. Okay, so if you can go down again. I'm sorry.
I'm feeling like Baby McGee here.
My magical apprentice. Yes, you're wonderful. Here we've got a workshop where they had to take the letter of their hometown, and they then had to fill it in as what we call a calligram. So that's really, she's done that well. She's done that in a sketchbook. She's taken a photo on her mobile and uploaded. As in the calligram below, Andy, they had to do a calligram of themselves. You know, it's not the best thing in the world. It's something she's done in her sketchbook, and she's done it as we asked her to do. Louis has said it's got a nice delicate quality. It's quite compelling. I think that when we use Padlet, we do have to be careful of our language, because it's very easy, as we all know, to write something and think, oh, I wish I hadn't put that. It doesn't sound very positive. So I think one of the things we try and do is be very positive with them on Padlet. Of course, that sometimes raises expectations that they're doing work at a level higher than actually they are. So that's something else I think that we as staff sometimes need to monitor as well. And sometimes simply a well done under nature is enough. Do you want to go down a little bit more, Andy, please? And yeah, keep going. And these are just little tasks that they had during the workshop. Every so often you'll see a little line going across the image, and that's the image loading. And sometimes that does slow down, and you get these yellow lines going across as the image is loading, and that's where we've been having our problems. Andy, can we go along to Sarah? It's surname beginning with P. Sorry, K. That's it. That's the one. Sorry, it's K, not P. Where did I get P from? There we go. Sarah Kopach. She's got quite a lot in here, so she's a good one to do. You can see that she's coloured her Padlet in yellow. She's used the yellow link there. And here, as Andy's doing, it's very easy to do. So you just click on the 3 yellow dots. Can you go back? Can you do that again, Andy, please?
There you go.
There you go. You can change the colours. And also, if you can leave that on, Andy, that would be great. You can edit the post, you can transfer it, and copy it, you can expand it, and you can delete it. So if the students put something up and they think, no, it's not ready, I want to go back and have another go, they can. And sometimes they do look at Padlet and they say in their feedback, I don't think this is as good as what I could have done, having seen everybody else's. And so they tell us they're going to take it off, they're going to have another go, they want to have another go. You can see in Jake's, we won't go over to it, Andy, but in Jake's there, he's done an amazing calligram digitally, and that's it, that's the one in the middle, Jake Kilgallen's. And some of the other students said, oh my God, you know, I can't work like that, that's so good. But as Tom says, yeah, it's a great way to highlight some good work, and it sets an example. You can actually say to the students, have a look at such and such's posts, or have a look at such and such's work. So if we go back to Sarah's, Andy, please. That's it. So this was a calligram of Lewisham, and then she did a calligram of herself. So the same projects, and you can see how we can compare we can pull all the Padlets down, and we can look at all the different Padlets. If we're doing a tutorial, we can look at all the different workshops for that calligram workshop, and we can have them right across the screen, which is really helpful. But already I'm seeing lots and lots of work where people have put things on and I actually haven't responded yet. If we go down a little bit on Sarah's again, Andy, please. This was a distressed paperwork we did. This was the avocado, was one of their very early little projects about calligram of a piece of fruit, a wanted poster they had to do. So these are very early pieces of work. And it's amazing how these students will develop their work very, very quickly and move on quite quickly to some really good work. If you go down, Andy, and just, yeah, one more, you can see that we've been doing text and image. So if you can stop there, Andy, that's lovely. And if you look at Mia's as well, you can see that this was just a little project where they had to use words to describe the sound, describe the sound. And you can see the differences there and how easy it is to say to the students, right, we're going to look at these 5 people's work for that particular project. That's lovely, if you can get them up, Andy. And we can compare and contrast, we can talk about them within the group. So if I wanted to have a breakout session in Moodle, I could have Jake, Sarah, Mia, and someone else perhaps from later on, and I could put their work right across the screen and we can just discuss each other's work in comparison, which is what we would do with the sketchbooks in the studio. So that's that one. Andy, if you could go towards the far right of the screen, please. That's lovely. So here, yeah, if you can go a bit further, Andy, that's great. You can see that Mia isn't engaging. And in fact, when we look at her attendance, it's poor. So she's somebody that we're focusing on post-consolidation week. And if you screen across, Andy, you can see that there are several times where you've got no work there, but you can see straight away who's engaging with it. There's those little yellow lines that come. They are the bane of my life when those happen. But yeah, keep going, Andy. That would be lovely. To the right would be great. Or to my right, sorry. There we are. So they're all engaging really well. And keep going, Andy. And there you go. And then at the end, as I said before, you've got Asia, Lillian, Venslava, who are just joining us, transferring from another course. Andy, if you press the plus, am I all right for time? Because I could talk about this forever. I've got a few minutes.
Just need to wrap it up a couple more minutes, if that's all right, so we can get people out for the 11 o'clock remembrance, if that's
yeah,
okay.
That would be lovely, yeah. So if you press the plus, Andy, there's your post. So Andy, you could write something in the title. You could write something below. And then if Andy...
Karen Ann, while you're doing that, can I just do this? Can we show them this one as well?
Yeah, that's right. What I was coming to. Yeah. So you don't have to go onto the arrow to upload. If you go to the 3 dots, that'll give you everything that you need. And it's so easy to upload something from your computer to link and all those different things. And there's Andy in the video. Yeah. As I say, though, Andy, the depending, I've got an Apple Mac 10.8, and if you click on the 3 dots again, Andy, my university computer on my desktop at uni will have all of these, but my home one will not allow me to do film and 1 or 2 other things. So I think that's something to do with my particular computer. But I think that generally is pretty much Padlet from sort of a point of which we didn't know it at all to a point at which, you know, the students are engaging, as you can see, generally. And, you know, we're pretty pleased with it. We're pretty happy with it. We use, I think the last thing I would say is that we, as staff, we use Slack in combination with it, and Slack is sort of just for us as staff, where we can sometimes discuss things that we don't necessarily want to open up on Padlet, and we found those 2 work quite well together as 2 different platforms. But yeah, I think that's me done then, Andy. Is that okay?
Amazing. I'm sure there's colleagues that are left would just say wow, because we are gonna have to team up for this, because if people come, I'm doing a session this afternoon on a show on group work. I've also got my introduction to Padlets, but if they do my introduction to Padlet workshop and then watch this, it's amazing. Wow. You are breaking it. That's the only thing I would say, is that you are, if I'm not sure anybody would put so much on, but you are getting to the point where Padlet would go, we didn't imagine people putting so much stuff on it. What a fantastic example. Thank you ever so much. Colleagues, is there any, I've just been checking the chat. If anybody wants to know more about, I am running a session this afternoon, which is, you can come along. If you've got a Padlet account, you can actually build something. I'm going to show you how to use it for group work. There's also an introductory Padlet workshop I run. There's also some stuff for the festival. I think we've tackled the questions as we go along.
I think Tom wants to ask something, Andy.
Tom, far away, please. I'm just conscious of the time. So, Tom, are you there?
We can't hear you, Tom. Oh. No.
Somebody was asking about embedding. Just to say, on the embed side of things, if I show you here, for example, on Karen Ann's, you get export and you get the embed code there, and you just copy and paste that into a label on a Moodle book page. But it's a bit more complex. You need to click, if you're in a label page in Moodle, you have to click the little down arrow that expands a sub menu, and at the very end you'll see a little HTML on and off button, and you have to turn that on, and then you basically cut and paste it in, and then just turn it off and it sets it in. You might just want to then, if one of the things in here, if you know a little bit about coding, is that in the middle of there's a little dimensions for that. And if you play around with that percentage, it would just change how much it feels on the screen. So you can play around with the aesthetics of how it actually look.
Can you hear me now?
Set the bar really high. Tom, we can hear you now.
Yay!
Yay!
So Karen Ann, that was fantastic. I think you've done really well, and I think as I've put in the chat, because you're
brilliant,
loading lots of images, the website has to load them all for them to be seen. It doesn't store them in sort of memory, which is why it then just kills it every time you load it. So it's a fantastic example, but yes, I think you are probably doing more than they expected you to do. What I'd like to say, just while Andy, on the share, something to highlight the recording and for people here, because we have the UOP account, where it says secret, don't worry about that. That is basically the standard open that students can see it. It's not actually secret. One of the things we have is when you're on your Padlet sort of front end and board, if you can click on secret for me just a second, please, where it says privacy. Change privacy, yes. There are other options. Private would be the completely hidden so the students can't see it. Password be that it's password protected. So again, you could, like Karen Ann's done there, if she was doing something with one student that didn't want their work publicly known, they could set a password so that it's just between her or them and the student. But the one people have been clicking on, which is org wide, and because everyone in our institutional license is actually listed as a student, when you do organizational wide as a privacy setting, that's where, and if Andy can very quickly nip to his front page of Padlet, so just the uop.pad, that's the badge, where it says recents, they're just your ones, but if you click on recents above that, that'll show everyone's that. So we can see Peter, Andy, John, they've set it to organizational, and because they're recent for everybody, that's why it appears there. If you only ever want to see your own stuff, just click made, or like Andy's kind of done, make folders to sort of stock things in the right way. I just kind of wanted to mention that because after such a sort of fantastic presentation, if more people are going to use it, which is only going to be a good thing, but we need to make sure that people understand what those privacy settings are. And I think I need to do a little bit of a video and a write-up for that after this. But just for today, again, thank you, Karen Ann. That was brilliant.
No,
if I can add to that very quickly, people have been asking, can the students get Padlet accounts? They can get their own free one by signing up, so they get the 3. But the point is, because you can make, I wouldn't necessarily, if I've got a small tutorial group, about 15 people, I can make a board for each one, and I could give them complete editing rights as if they owned it. I wouldn't necessarily be making 100 boards for each student in a large session, but by using the boards creatively around groups, you can give the students a lot of ownership. And I think Karen Ann's demonstrated the kind of things you can then do with it.
Yeah, I think as well, it is very simple to use for somebody who's not a tech whiz kid or anything like that. I'm just not, but I find this very, very easy to use, very easy to set up for the students, and very quick. So yeah, so thank you.
Karen Ann, it's absolutely brilliant, absolutely fab. You should be really chuffed with that. I think it's amazing. And I think colleagues in have come along today, and it's been such a, for your course, I'll tell you something, I want to come and do your course because it looked amazing. I really do. So we put it together. I just want a chance for people to get ready for 11 o'clock. So again, thank you, Karen Ann. Absolutely brilliant. Colleagues, just keep an eye out for the events page, because we do additional support around Padlet. But like I said, Karen Ann, thanks ever so much.